preaching center here in Portland Bhakti Center. There's many, many nice devotees here. Just beating down the door to become devotees. Okay, let me just send a text message to everybody. All right. Okay, let me check, make sure that we're online. Facebook, YouTube. Let's check the sound quality. Portland Bhaktis. Good. Okay. Okay, everybody, we're going to start, and they lent me their guitar here, so we're going to play. Hold on one second. It's further apart. Let's see the sound levels. Hare Krishna. All right, sound levels. Hey. Hey, Radhe, go. Hey, hey, Radhe, Radhe, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvadikacharya, also Tada Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace Abhaya, Chananada Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya, Srila Huidas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Shitweda Gadadha Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopikapada Sayam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Maturanam Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Vilasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaur Charni Nivashesha Srinyavadi Paschatya Dejatarne. So as I mentioned before, we're here at the Portland Bhakti Center, and we're going to be giving our regular class on the Chaitanya Chart. So, Om Gana Timiranda Shagananchana Shakaya Chakshur Yena Tasmai Shigurve Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances under the lotus feet of my spiritual masters, Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was ignorant. So we're continuing with our study of the fourth chapter of the Madhya Lila, the Caitanya Caritamrta, and we are hearing about Madhavendra Puri's devotional service, static devotional service in Vrindavan, and then later on Pune with the Shirachara Gopinath Didi, and then later Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. So we're continuing with text 80 of Madhya 4, and we're hearing about, as I mentioned before, Madhavendra Puri's ecstatic devotional service in Vrindavan to Gopal, and we're actually hearing about the Abhishek for the deity Gopal. The deity Gopal is later taken to Natwar and became Nachi. So, Achamana dia dila vitaka sanchaya arati karila loke kari jaya jaya. Madhavendra Puri offered water to Gopal for washing his mouth, and he gave him betel nuts to chew. Then, while Arti was performed, all the people chanted, Jaya, Jaya, all glories to Gopal. Remember, Gopal is on top of Govardhan Hill, and he's a very big deity. It took many, many people, many, many devotees, Brahmanas, to carry him up there. All right. Shaya Karaila Nutana Kata Anana Navavastra Hanitara Paripatiya. Arranging for the Lord's rest, Srila Madhavendra Puri brought a new cot, and over this he spread a new bedspread, and thus made the bed ready. Let me put my phone on mute so we don't have to hear it. Turn it off. Trina Tati Diachari Dik Avarila Uparete Ekatati Dia Achadila. A temporary temple was constructed by covering the bed all around with a straw mattress. Thus there was a bed and a straw mattress to cover it. Actually, this is called a Shayana Nivas, right? You did a lot. Yeah, one of my disciples here, Govardhan, who was expert at deity worship for many years. And actually, when we installed the deity in Fiji, we installed Radhagolav Vihari. The first night, we actually take the deity off the altar and we lay the deities down on beds, special beds that are just made for that occasion. And while the deity is taking rest, I got a chance to chant bhajans to the deities. It was one of the most ecstatic experiences I've ever had in Krishna consciousness. So the deity, the actual big deity, so I'm looking at the devotees here in case you're wondering why I'm looking away from the camera. So the actual big deity is normally not taken off the altar at all. During normal deity worship, you have what's called the Utsava Murtis, the small deities. They're taken off and put in beds at night. But the big deities just stand there. But during the installation, after the first day of the installation, you take the deities and you put them down in beds, and then you sing to them as they're taking rest. It's a very, very sweet occasion. I actually have videos of that, which one day I will show everybody. Puri Goshani Agya Tila Sakale Brahmane Abala Vrida Gamera Loka Karaha Bojane. After the Lord was laid down to rest on the bed, Madhavendra Puri gathered all the Brahmanas who had prepared the prasadam and said to them, now feed everyone sumptuously, from the children on up to the aged. Sabivasi krame krame bhojana karila brahmane brahmani gane age ka oyaila. All the people gathered there sat down to honor the prasadam, and by they took food. All the Brahmanas and their wives were fed first. The Prabhupada said, according to the Varnashram system, Brahmanas are always honored first. Thus, at the festival, the Brahmanas and their wives were first offered the remnants of food, and then the others, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. This has always been the system, and it is still prevalent in India, even though the caste Brahmanas are not qualified. The system is still current due to the Varnashram institutional rules. Comment that people are considered Brahmin, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, or Shudras according to their guna and karma. That means their qualities and work, not according to their janma or birth. And the reason the Brahmana is given special respect, it's not because he wants respect. If a Brahmin wants respect, he's not a Brahmin. If a Brahmin demands respect, he's not a Brahmin. A Brahmin is one who is sama dhamma tapat shosham shanti rajavameva. He's equipoised, whether he gets respected or he gets criticized, he doesn't care. But it's for the benefit of others, so that people will take what the Brahman says seriously, because he's considered being the spiritual master of all the other varnas. And therefore, he guides them, so they have to take him seriously. That's also why Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas, so that others take him seriously. So that's why you have this hierarchy in society. It's not that the Brahmin is considered better spiritually. Everyone has equal rights, and everyone has the right to become a Brahmin. But they have to have the qualities: equipoise, self-control, tame senses, as Prabhupada says, uh, clean, religious, studying the Shastras, and practicing what's in the Shastras. This is what a Brahmin is. And preaching, yajan, yajan, patan, patan, dana prati. So everyone has a right. Men, women, children have a right to become Brahmins. It is not restricted to a particular caste, or particular race, or particular culture, or particular nationality, or particular gender. It is a designation according to quality. So you have to see, if you have the qualities of a Brahmin, great. And if you have the qualities of a Kshatriya, great too, because then you can protect the Brahmanas, or you can protect society. And you can also organize things, do other things like that. And if you have the qualities of a Vaishya, fantastic. Do business. Do a lot of business. It's like we have one devotee here who's doing a lot of business and buying and selling things. So that's wonderful, because the Vaishya is the stomach of society. Without the stomach, you can't digest anything. And then, if you have the qualities of a Shudra, that's fantastic, because a Shudra is serving. So there's nothing wrong with being a member of any of the castes. There's no discrimination. It's simply a matter of quality, of the qualities that someone has. Someone's outside the door. So, because we're in the preaching center right now, it's simply a matter of the qualities that someone has manifested. Determine what type of occupation he has. That's all. And where he sits in society. So, Prabhupada actually, interestingly enough, was trying in the beginning to make a whole bunch of Brahmanas, to make basically everyone a Brahmana. But then Prabhupada saw, after experimenting with us, it didn't work. So then Prabhupada said, during his last years on this planet, he said, 50% of this work was not finished because he had not instituted Varnashram. Varnashram means basically understanding that not everybody's going to be a Brahmin. Very few people are going to be a Brahmin. Brahman's the head of society. And therefore, there has to be opportunities for everyone to engage themselves according to the psychophysical nature. And that's the guru's business. The guru's business is to ascertain the psychophysical nature of the disciple and give them, him or her, practical service. So that's why the Brahmanas were given more respect and they were fed first, because it allows people to respect them, so that people, not that the Brahmin is thinking, I have to eat first. Not that the Brahmin is greedy. If a Brahmin is greedy, he's not a Brahmin, except in the case of Madhu Mango, who is actually Krishna's great friend, who is a greedy Brahmin who always wants to eat different types of sweets, especially ladus. But that's an exception. But a Brahmin should not be greedy. Otherwise, if he's greedy, probably he's Vaishya or Shudra. So, Anya Gramera Lokayata Dekite Ahela Gopala Dekya Saba Prasada Kaila. Those who took prasadam included not only the people of the Govardhan village, but also those who came from other villages to see the deity of Gopal. They too were offered prasadam to eat. Dekya Purira Prabhava Loke Chamatkara Puranakuta Yena Haila Sakshakara. Seeing the influence of Madhavendra Puri, all the people gathered there were struck with wonder. They saw that the Anakut ceremony, which had been performed before during the time of Krishna, was now taking place again by the mercy of Madhavendra Puri. Prabhupada explains that formerly at the end of Dwapara Yuga, all the cowherd men of Vrindavan had arranged to worship King Indra, but they gave this worship up, following the advice of Krishna. Instead, they performed a ceremony whereby they worshiped the cows, Brahmanas, and Govardhan Hill. At that time, Krishna expanded himself and declared, I am Govardhan Hill. In this way, he accepted all the paraphernalia and food offered to Govardhan Hill. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 24th chapter, Huchantam vivida pakka supantam payasadayaha sanyavapopa shaskurya sarvadohascha kalatvana bhagavata shakradarpam jigam sata proktam nishamya nandaya sad bhagarni nanta tadvachaha tata cha vyadadhu sarvam yatha marusudanaha yacha yatva swasjayanam tadravena giri tujan upahritya balinsavan adritya yavasam gavam godanani puraskritya girim chakru pradakshinam. Prepare very nice foods of all description for the grains and ghee collected for the yajna. Prepare rice, dal, and halva, pakoras, puri, and all kinds of milk preparations like sweet rice, sweet balls, sandesha, rasgula. Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna therefore advised the coward man to stop the Indra Yajna and begin the Govardhan Puja to chastise Indra, who's very much puffed up at being the supreme controller of the heavenly planets. The honest and simple coward men, headed by Nanda Maharaj, accepting Krishna's proposal and executed in detail everything he advised. They performed Govardhan worship and circumambulation of the hill. According to the instruction of Lord Krishna, Nanda Maharaj and the coward men called in learned Brahmanas began to worship Govardhan hill by chanting Vedic hymns and offering prasadam. The inhabitants of Vrindavan assembled together, decorated their cows, and gave them grass. Keeping the cows in front, they began to circumambulate Govardhan Hill. So the reason for this particular ceremony, there's many different reasons. First of all, Krishna wanted to teach the residents of Vrindavan they should just worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Govardhan Hill is not different than Krishna. Secondly, Krishna wanted to teach Indra a lesson, and he deliberately arranged Govardhan Puja utilizing the same ingredients that were meant for worshiping Indra. And he actually basically ignored Indra. Indra got very angry, and of course, we all know the rest of the story. Sakala Brahmane Puri Vaisnava Katila Seva Madhya Savanio Jila. All the Brahmanas present on that occasion were initiated by Madhavendra Puri into the Vaisnava cult, and Madhavendra Puri engaged them in different types of service. In the scriptures, it is stated, Satkarma Nipano Vipro Mantra Tantra Visharada. A qualified Brahmin must be expert in the occupational duties of the Brahmana. His duties are mentioned as 6 Brahminical engagements. That's, of course, Prabhupada doesn't quote the whole verse here. Yajan, Yajan, Patan, Patan, Dana, Pratigraha. Let me continue reading the purport, and then I'll explain some of these things. Patana means that a Brahmana must be conversant with the Vedic scriptures. He must also be able to teach it. others to study the Vedic literatures. This is Patana. He must also be expert in worshipping different deities and performing the Vedic rituals, yajna. On account of this yajna, the Brahmana, being the head of society, performs all the Vedic rituals for Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. This is called yajna, assisting others in performing ceremonies. The remaining two items are dana and pratigraha. The Brahmana accepts all kinds of contributions, pratigraha, from his followers, namely the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, but he does not keep all the money. He keeps only as much as required and gives the balance to others in charity. In order for such a qualified Brahmana to worship the deity, he must be a Vaishnava. Thus a Vaishnava's position is superior to that of a Brahmin. This example given by Madhavendra Puri confirms that even though Brahman may be very expert, he cannot become a priest or servitor of Vishnu Murti unless he is initiated in Vaishnava mantra. After installing the deity of Gopal, Madhavendra Puri initiated all the Brahmanas into Vaishnavism. He then allotted the Brahmanas different types of service to the deities. I think I should explain something that's going on here. So the Brahman, when someone becomes a Brahman, of course, at birth, everyone's a Shudra. Janmana Jayate Shudra. And then you have this other verse, Samskara Isham. When the proper samskara is performed, one becomes dvija, or twice born. This word dvija also refers to birds, because birds are twice born, although they're not brahmanas. In other words, the egg pops out of the mother, and then the mother sits on the egg, and the egg hatches. Also, marsupials are twice born, like kangaroos, because they come out of the mother's womb and they climb into the pouch, and then they're born again from the pouch. Anyway, but they're not called dvijas. So Brahmana becomes a Brahmana if he has the qualities. And number two, by the proper administration of a samskara. Samskara means reformatory practice, basically means an impression on the subtle body. The first samskara that people perform is the Garbhadan samskara, means the seed giving ceremony when the parents have sex life, so that the child will have the right qualities, or the right type of soul will be attracted. So that's called the Garbhadan samskara. And then after that, there's and I don't know the names of all samskaras, but there's a samskara before, it's safe delivery samskara. Then there's delivery samskara, namakarana, give a name to the kid. And then at a certain point, when the kid goes to school, there's the chadi or something like that, where the kid gets a piece of chalk, or nowadays a computer. And then there's a samskara where the child, depending on his varna, anywhere from 5 to 8 years of age, or even older, gets a Brahmin thread. Even if he's not a Brahmin, he may get a Brahmin thread. But if he's a Brahmin, he gets the Brahmin thread. And at the time of getting the thread, the Brahmin is given the Gayatri mantra. Specifically, the Gayatri mantra known as Brahma Gayatri, which I'm not going to give all of you right now, but it starts with. And actually, if you look it up on the internet, you can find out what the mantra is. But you're not initiated just by reading it. You have to get it from a master. Sampradaya vinahi mantras te nishpala mataha. If the mantra doesn't come in disciplic succession, it's not going to be effective. Anyway, so the Brahmana is given that mantra, the Brahma Gayatri, and he's considered a Brahmana. Now, there's many different types of Brahmanas. There's Vipras, learned Brahmanas. There's ritualistic Brahmanas. There's all sorts of different types of Brahmanas. Literally, the word Brahmana means one who knows Brahman. But in a practical sense, it basically means someone who does these different functions like yajan, yajan, patan, patan, dana pratigraha, which probably previously explained. That means doing sacrifice, teaching about sacrifice, uh, uh, teaching people from the Shastras, learning from the Shastras, giving charity, and accepting charity. These are the 6 activities of the Brahmana. Uh, Brahmana is not allowed to accept a Shudra's occupation because if a Brahmana accepts a Shudra occupation, it's a Brahmana. That's why, I mean, in a traditional sense, we're not talking in a practical, actual sense. That's why when Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami accepted employment under the Nawab Hussain Shah, that employment was considered a Shudra occupation. And from that point onwards, according to the strict Brahminical regulations, they were not considered Brahmins, although they are the best of the Brahmins in the sense that they knew Brahman, or the Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Person, Godhead, Krishna. So anyway, but the word Brahmin, it refers to a lot of different people who've gotten that Gayatri mantra and the Brahmin thread. But a Brahmin doesn't necessarily have to be a Vaishnava. You got Brahmanas who are impersonalists, Brahmanas who are ritualistic. And they're still Brahmins. So in order to worship the deity, one has to be a Vaishnava. And when you become a Vaishnava, from the standpoint of Brahmana, and you can become a Vaishnava from any standpoint, you don't have to be a Brahmana to be a Vaishnava, then you become better than a Brahmin, a ritualistic Brahmana. And then at that point, you're given, of course, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and you're given, if you take second initiation, you're given different Gayatri mantras other than the Brahma Gayatri. Or you may be given the Brahma Gayatri again. And in ISKCON, we've had some discussions about this because we've been criticized by ritualistic Brahmanas in India who say the Brahma Gayatri to anyone who is not family. So there's this criticism about that. Nor should anyone who's not born in Brahma. So this is a ritualistic conception. Actually, anyone who takes the platform of being a Vaishnava has the right to chant the Brahma Gayatri as well as the other Gayatri mantras if they're following strictly Krishna consciousness. So, so we're interested in qualities in work, not in birth. And then you get some people who are chauvinistic who say that women should not be given the Brahma Gayatri. So recently our Shastric Advisory Committee on the GBC showed completely philosophically, conclusively, that anyone who is qualified, men, women, and even children, they can be given the Brahma Gayatri if they're qualified. And you may say, well, what about children? Well, you got the 4 Kumaras. I mean, they're kids, they're only 5 years old. They certainly not only had the Brahma Gayatri, but they were giving the Brahma Gayatri. And you may say, what about women? And then look at Lakshmi. She's the head of a sampradaya. And she certainly was giving the Brahma Gayatri. Main guru in the Lakshmi Sampradaya, or the Sri Sampradaya, of which Ramanujacharya is the present day Acharya, or the, let's say, not really present, but modern Acharya. Okay. So these Brahmanas were initiated, even though, this is interesting also, even though they were initiated as Brahmanas, they were not initiated as Vaishnavas. So Madhavendra Puri gave them the additional Vaishnava mantras, the Vaishnava Gayatri mantras, so they could worship the deity, which are required when one's worshiping the deity. Little history there. From 4 in the morning till 10 at night, from Mangalarti to Shayana Arati, there must be at least 5 or 6 Brahmanas to take care of the deity. 6 artis are performed in the temple, and food is frequently offered to the deity and prasadam distributed. This is the method of worshiping the deity according to the rules and regulations set by the predecessors. Our sampradaya belongs to the disciplic succession of Madhavendra Puri, who belong to the Madhya Sampradaya. We are in the disciplic succession of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who was initiated by Sri Ishwara Puri, a disciple of Madhavendra Puri's. Our sampradaya is therefore called Madhya Sampradaya. As such, we must carefully follow in the footsteps of Sri Madhavendra Puri and observe how he installed the Gopal deity on top of Govardhan Hill, and how he arranged and performed the Anakut ceremony one day, and so forth. Our installation of deities in America and the wealthy countries of Europe should be carried out in terms of Madhavendra Puri's activities. All the servitors of the deity must be strictly qualified as Brahmanas, and specifically must engage in the Vaisnava custom, offering as much prasadam as possible and distributing it to the devotees who visit the temple to see the Lord. Technically speaking, you don't offer prasadam to the deities, but this is just a technical point. You offer both to the deities, then it becomes prasadam. And in Jagannath Puri, they offer prasadam more than 50 times a day. Some people told me 55 times a day or 54 times a day. And the reason for that is interesting, that the person who established the Jagannath Puri temple was named King Indradunya. And when he established the temple, he begged the Lord for Jagannath for different benedictions. And one benediction was that he wouldn't have any children. Now, you may ask, why should he ask for that benediction? Well, the reason for that is that if one has children, the children might claim the temple is theirs when the king passed away. And that happens sometimes. We see that in Vrindavan, that happened with some of the Goswami temples. So, and then the other benedictions were that the main benediction I'm referring to right now is that the Lord's hands would always be wet. And the reason he asked for that benediction is that way they would always be serving bhoga to the deities in Jagannath Puri. Practically speaking, the temple, he also asked for the benediction, the temple would only be closed for an hour. So almost every night, or not almost every night, except for about 2 hours, they're offering food to the deities and distributing that food in Jagannath Puri. And of course, I have not been able to go into the Jagannath temple because I was born in the Western world, and they have this whole ritualistic conception. And not good. Prabhupada said, Jagannath is Jagannath. He's Lord of the universe. He's not Lord of Puri. He's not Puri. Although I was just listening to a class that Srila Prabhupada gave, and Prabhupada was talking to this one poet from the Beat generation. His name was Allen Ginsberg. And Allen Ginsberg actually went in to see Lord Jagannath. How did he get in to see Lord Jagannath? Allen Ginsberg said he covered himself up and acted like a completely insane guy. And when they tried to speak to him, he just went like that. So they thought, oh, he's a crazy guy. Let's not talk to him. Just get him out of the temple as soon as possible. So, if you want to go see Lord Jagannath, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Actually, you shouldn't force yourself into a temple where you're not appreciated. And neither did Haridas Thakur do that. Neither did Rupa Goswami do that, or Sanatana Goswami, because, as I mentioned before, it was considered that they had lost their caste by working for the Muslim government. So, Punadina Sheshe Prabhura Kanaila Uttarana Kichuboga Lagaila Kadaila Jala Pana. After taking rest, the deity must be awakened at the end of the day, and immediately some food and some water must be offered to him. This offering is called the Vaikali Boga, food offered at the end. So we do this in the ISKCON temples, usually after the noon arti, Boga arti. We put the deities to rest, and they're woken up sometimes at 3:45 or 4 o'clock, sometime around there, given another offering, a light offering with some sweets, maybe a little cake, some milk, whatever. is the standard of the temple. And they're offered and then later on they have the Sundararti. Some temples they don't have a Shayanarti because it's a little late and the devotees get overexhausted. If you have a lot of pujaris, you can do that. Gopala Prakata Haila Deshe Shabda Haila Ashapasha Gramera Loka Te Aila. When it was advertised throughout the country that Lord Gopal had appeared atop Govardhan Hill, all the people from neighboring villages came to see the deity. Ekeka Dina Ekeka Grame Aila Mankina Anakuta Kare Sabe Arashita Hana. One village after another was pleased to beg Madhavendra Puri to allot them one day to perform the Anakuta ceremony. Thus day after day, the Anakuta ceremony was performed. Anakuta means pile up all sorts of grains and other types of foodstuffs and offer to the deity. It's like a hill. Ratri Kale Takure Re Aya Shayana Purigoshani Kaila Kichu Kavojana. Sri Madhavendra Puri did not eat anything throughout the day, but at night, after laying the deity down to rest, he took a little milk preparation. Such devotion. Of course, they had Madhavendra Puri has a spiritual body. Don't you try that. Pratakale punataiche karila sevana analanakika gramera ailaloka ganana. The next morning, the rendering of service of the deity began again, and people from one village arrived with all kinds of food grains. Anagrita dari dukta grameyata chila gopalera age loka aniya darila. The inhabitants of the village brought to the deity of Gopal as much food, grains, ghee, yogurt, and milk as they had in the village. Ana, Grita, Dari, and Duga, food grains, ghee, yogurt, and milk. Actually, these are the basis of all food. Vegetables and fruits are subsidiary. Hundreds and thousands of preparations can be made out of grains, vegetables, ghee, milk, and yogurt. The food offered to Gopal in the Anakut ceremony contained only these 5 ingredients. Only demoniac people are attracted to other types of food, which will not even mention in this connection. We should understand that in order to prepare nutritious food, we require only grains, ghee, yogurt, and milk. We cannot offer anything else to the deity. The Vaisnava, the perfect human being, does not accept anything not offered to the deity. People are often frustrated with national food policies, but from the Vedic scriptures we find that if there are sufficient cows and grains, the entire food problem is solved. The Vaishyas, people engaged in agriculture and commerce, are therefore recommended in the Bhagavad Gita to produce grains and give protection to cows. Cows are the most important animal because they produce the miracle food milk from which we can prepare ghee and yogurt. Of course, here we are sitting in a place where it's a vegan preaching center, and I am also vegan. So, if someone, let me turn up the volume. All right. Someone's complaining about the audio fading. Okay. Shouldn't fade now. Let me just turn on that microphone. It won't fade now. Okay. So let's go back to this thing. So I made a determination that I would not take any particular food that is the product of violence. So even though previously I took so much milk, I was determined that I would not be the cause of pain to Krishna's most cow. So anyway, and nowadays many people are vegans, and many of the people that we want to attract to Krishna consciousness are vegans. So we have to respect that. Let's look at the volume again. We have to respect that, and also we have to be consistent with our philosophy, basically, one aspect of which is not harming any living entity. So we should be consistent because people will criticize us. We talk about cow protection, and then our very activities are the cause of the mutilation and the murder of millions of cows, then it appears that we may be hypocrites. The perfection of human civilization depends on Krishna consciousness, which recommends deity worship. Preparations made from vegetables, grains, and milk uh, are offered to the deity and then distributed. Here we can see the difference between the East and the West. The people who came to see the deity of Gopal brought all kinds of food to offer the deities. They brought all the food they had in stock, and they came before the deity not only to accept prasadam for themselves, but to distribute it to others. The Krishna consciousness movement vigorously approves this practice of preparing food, offering it to the deity, and distributing it to the general population. This activity should be extended universally to stop sinful eating habits as well as other behavior befitting only demons. A demoniac civilization will never bring peace within the world. Since eating is the first necessity in human society, those engaged in solving the problems of preparing and distributing food should take lessons from Madhavendra Puri and execute the Anakut ceremony. When the people take to eating only prasadam offered to the deity, all the demons will be turned to Vaishnavas. When the people are Krishna conscious, naturally the government will be also. A Krishna conscious man is always a very liberal well-wisher of everyone. When such men head the government, the people will certainly be sinless. They will no longer be disturbing demons. Prabhupada uses this word demon quite often. It is then and then only that a peaceful condition can prevail in society. Because Prabhupada was asked several times, "Are you vegetarians?" And Prabhupada said, "No, we are not vegetarians. We eat what Krishna eats." Because as Krishna states in the Gita, that even if one eats vegetable foodstuffs or milk or whatever, without offering to him, you're still accruing karma. Of course, the translation is you're still committing sin or eating sin. So because there is some violence that occurs, even though it's a minimal amount of violence that occurs when you eat some vegetarian food. I mean, you still have to, let's say, if you eat an apple, there's seeds in the apple, even though you're not killing the tree, hopefully. Or if you're eating a little asparagus, you're taking this poor little asparagus out of the ground. Or, whatever you're doing, you're cutting the plant. Even if you're eating spinach, you're cutting the spinach plant to take the leaves. So you're still responsible, as is said in the Vedic literature, is jivasa, jivasa. One living entity exists by eating another living entity. You can't eat nuts and bolts, as Srila Prabhupada would say. So therefore, we offer everything to Krishna. And people who eat the remnants of food offered to Krishna, they make spiritual progress and they gradually come up to the mode of goodness. And if you eat food that's not offered to Krishna, that food will affect your consciousness and you may have demoniac thoughts. Prabhupada specifically said that the reason Kripacharya and Dronacharya took the wrong side, and grandfather Bhishma, of course, took the wrong side in the Battle of Kurukshetra because they were eating food cooked in the kitchen, that is the kitchen of Duryodhana. And I'm sure Duryodhana was not offering the food to Krishna. He certainly would never have done that. So the makes the mind wicked. Prabhupada said, if you eat food that's not offered to Krishna, the mind becomes wicked. Why is that? Karnam guna sangasha sad janmajonishu. the modes of nature influence your consciousness. So we want to take food that is not influencing our consciousness in a negative way, but influencing our consciousness in a positive way, and that's prasadam. Okay, so we're going to take questions now. We can even take questions. All right, let me allow you to ask questions. Hold on a second. Let's allow our local viewers. Anyone have any questions? No? No? No questions. Okay. No questions locally? Okay, online. Who has a question? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Yes.
Guru Maharaj,
So, what's the question?
I was talking to Ishwar Prabhu. He's a brahmachari in Sydney, and he was talking about Prakash Lila in Caitanya Bhagavad. Okay, can you please explain a bit about Prakash Lila?
Prakash means manifest. There's the manifest Lila of the Lord. Which Prakash? Mahaprakash.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah. I got it now. Mahaprakash was a manifestation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he showed himself to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I believe it went on for 48 hours.
Yes.
Mahaprakash Lila. And he was describing to each of the devotees their relationship with Krishna, how Krishna had saved them previously, and how he was the Supreme Personality of God. That's called the Mahaprakash. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's best. All right? You can read about it in the Chaitanya Bhagavat or the Chaitanya Mangala. It goes into more detail in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Because the early pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are very much detailed in the Chaitanya Bhagavat and not so much in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Because the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he didn't want to duplicate the efforts of Vrindavan Das, other writers on the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay?
Yes. Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Okay, who else has a question? This is your opportunity.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev. This is Rishikesh.
Rishikesh,
Hi.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Gurudev, Madhavendra Puri went to, say, Malaya to get the sandalwood pulp for the Gopal. Right? Is it
He
in
went,
Malaysia?
he went to Jagannath Puri to get the sandal. We're going to hear about that later, to get the sandal.
Okay, he says Malaya, so I was not sure.
What's that?
He said he went to Malaya. Malaya means present day Malaysia.
No. It doesn't say he went to Malaya. It says that the sandalwood comes from the Malaya hills, but he obtained
Okay.
he obtained the sandalwood. That's later on in this chapter.
So it
He
was
obtained the
imported to Jagannath
sandalwood
Puri.
from Jagannath Puri,
Okay,
but it doesn't.
understand.
Yeah, it doesn't. He never went to the Malaya hills to get it. He went to. Of course, a little information here from Braja Lila. According to today's class, today was the day he started for Jagannath Puri. Wow.
Today is Gopal's birthday also. Gopal Prabhu's birthday.
Really?
Oh
Well, he's
yeah,
not
that's what I'm
online.
hearing.
Really? That's auspicious. Well,
Very auspicious.
I don't think he's online because he's with his father is visiting him during his birthday. Well, sure. Here's another question from someone. Let's say Atmanandini. So the Vedic system that a Brahmin lady should not marry a Kshatriya man. So does it translate into current astrological matching charts where the girl and boy's inclination to Shudra or Brahmin mentality is looked at and compatibility checked? Very good question. Very good question. There's mixed marriages between different castes are sometimes allowed, but usually what's allowed is what's called anulom rather than pratilom, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that. Anulom means where you have a man from a higher caste marry a lady from a lower caste. And of course, you have Kardama Muni and Devahuti. That's a perfect example of that. But when you have the girl from a higher caste marry a boy from a lower caste, then let me just finish with this before you ask more questions. When you have the girl from a higher caste marry a boy from a lower caste or lower qualities, let's not even talk about caste because you can misunderstand. When you have a girl with more mode of goodness qualities marry a boy with more passion and ignorant qualities, it's a bad combination. Why is it a bad combination? Because the girl is going to want to study, is going to want to preach, and the husband is going to want to control, and the male psychology is basically to control. So he wants to bring the girl down. She's not going to be happy being brought down to his level. It would be a disaster in many cases. So it's better if you're going to have a mixed marriage that the man should be more intelligent than the woman or equal. In many cases, you have two. In most of the cases, it's two Kshatriya married. Like Lord Ram, he married Sita Devi. Sita Devi also was from Kshatriya dynasty. And Lord Ram, of course, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he's Kshatriya. Kshatriya coming from the Surya Vamsa. Krishna came from the Soma Vamsa, that means the moon dynasty. Lord Ram came from the sun dynasty. So therefore, one has to be careful and consult. I don't even know any good astrologers, so I think more important than astrology is you consult your common sense. Of course, the main problem is that when people fall in love, they don't have any common sense. You know, as the song goes, when the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. So, so I mean, that's the real problem. People fall in love and then you can't say anything because it has a life of its own. It's like Dracula. I'm not Dracula, Frankenstein. Sorry, I made a mistake. It has a life of its own, and you just can't do anything about it. Because people in love, they get bewildered. Nunam brahmata kurate vikarma, yarindriya priti apranoti. They don't think, what's going to happen 10 years from now? What's going to happen 20 years from now? Who's going to pay the bills? Now, basically, in ISKCON, we have our Grahastha Vision team, which has established a questionnaire for people, if they ever read it, and fill it out before they even think of getting married. But the problem is, love. All you need is love. Forget about common sense at that particular point. So therefore, I don't know too much about astrology. I do know about astrology, but I don't trust too many people with astrology, nor do I trust computers with astrology. And there's hardly any expert people. I would say use common sense. How can you tell what Varna someone is? Very easily. We find the story in the Mahabharata of Drupada, who didn't know what Varna the Pandavas were. Because the Pandavas, that is Arjuna, had won Draupadi in this competition where Arjuna hit the fish that was in the ceiling, looking down at a body of water on the ground. Anyway, so he wanted to find out. So it was quite easy. He just put the implements 4 varnas in front of them. That means he put books, he put weapons, he put hammer and nails, or whatever they use in those days for the Shudras. And for the Vaishyas, he put gold. And the Pandavas immediately went for the weapons. They picked up the weapons. They were picking up the bow, looking at it, admiring it. And therefore he understood they were Kshatriyas, because he didn't know what Varna they were. They were acting as Brahmanas, or supposedly they were Brahmanas, but they weren't actually Brahmanas. They were in disguise. So it's pretty easy to tell. And as I mentioned before, one of the prime duties of the spiritual master is to ascertain the psychophysical nature of the disciple. And I wouldn't use astrology. I would use common sense and engage the disciple accordingly in Krishna consciousness or in his life. You know, I guess you put a lot of gold in front of the disciple if he likes to use a Vaishya. Like with the children, there's this ceremony they do with the children, like as soon as they can crawl, like, 5 to 7 months, they put the implements for the different varnas in front of the child, and whichever one the child crawls to first, that may indicate the child's varna. It's supposed to indicate, but I've seen people switch. So I think it's very important to ascertain someone's varna, not only as far as marriage, but as far as just what they should do in life, because they won't be happy. If you ask someone to do something, let's say someone is a Vaishya by nature, and you stick them on the altar, they're going to go crazy, right? They'll lose their minds, basically. Or if someone is a Brahmin and you have them running a business, he'll go crazy. Or if someone's a Kshatriya and you have him meditating, he'll go crazy. Like Arjuna, he wanted to renounce everything and give up his service as a Kshatriya. And Krishna said, no, it ain't going to work. Because by your nature, you're going to be forced to fight. So better you fight for me. There was that one instance in Arjuna's life where Arjuna was performing austerity to please Lord Shiva. And as he was performing austerity to please Lord Shiva, a big boar, that means a wild pig, started to attack him. So he took out his bow and arrow and he shot the wild boar. And at the same time, another arrow hit the wild boar. And that arrow had come from this hunter guy, Karata. It doesn't look like an ordinary hunter. He wasn't, but he actually looked like an ordinary hunter. And Arjuna had a whole argument with him. My arrow hit first. No, my arrow hit first. And then he had to fight with him over whose arrow hit first. That's definitely not Brahmin stuff. Like if I was meditating and someone fired an arrow to protect me, I would thank him. I said, who cares? Who the hell cares which arrow hit first? But Arjuna cared because he was manifesting the pastime of being a Kshatriya, which means the mode of passion, where you care about being the winner. Brahmana doesn't care about being the winner. Kshatriya cares about being the winner. A Vaishya cares about money. And a Shudra, he likes doing artistic things. It's easy to understand, and it's very important to establish this understanding of someone's psychophysical nature. Okay. So any other questions? Akshaya Tritiya today. I mean, you don't have to do any special austerities. You just celebrate. It's a day of celebration, not a day of austerity. You eat more prasadam and you have more kirtan. You will not become Krishna conscious by performing more austerities. That's a common misunderstanding that people have, that the less that they eat, the more austerities they do, the more Krishna conscious they become. And that is mentioned in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. First, wait, let me finish with this before I answer your question. First chapter, verse 4. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's not. No, it's not. I got the wrong verse. It's mentioned by Jadabart. Sorry. Rahuganai tat tapasanayati nachesya nirvad grahat gatava nachandasanaiva jalagni surya vinama hatpada rajopishekam. That no one will become Krishna conscious by engaging in austerities, by being a good grahasta, a good sannyasi, or good whatever. Only by taking the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee, or bathing in the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee. That's the only way. It's like of course, I had mentioned before, I'm here in Portland, Oregon. So on the way here, I was actually thinking, what do I want in life? And then I was thinking that I simply want to be Prabhupada's servant eternally. Okay. So here's some questions. Tulsi asks, aren't we a mix of varnas? Yes, we are a mix of varnas, but we have one primary varna. And we should engage that varna in Krishna's service. Another question. So Arjuna is in the mode of passion? No, Arjuna was not in the mode of passion, but he was pastime that he was acting in the mode of passion. Arjuna is a pure devotee. Mamchiyo vyavicharena bhakti yogena sevate sakunan samatichaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. He's a pure devotee. But even pure devotees have bodies that are given to them by Krishna that are in the different modes of nature. Even pure devotees. I mean, just like you may be a pure devotee, but if you're given an old car, you can't drive very fast. So it's not a question that something's wrong with you. There's something wrong with your car. I think you understand the point. Okay, Krishna Priya, just one more question. Krishna Priya, ask me a question.
Jai, please set my obeisances. So I know you've had so much experience in managing over the years and in different projects. And we know how Srila Prabhupada, he always wanted the devotees to protect the cow.
Oops.
Difficulties that took place. So can you speak on that? If someone does want to actually do cow protection, how it can actually be something that is sustainable and susceptible, where they don't end up committing like more offenses to the cows?
Yeah, if one wants to do cow protection, they shouldn't try to make money from it. They should take the cow protection as important, not the milk production as important. And the milk is a byproduct of cow protection. It's not that cow protection is a byproduct of milk. And if you want to protect cows, Prabhupada said you also have to be ready to take care of the bulls. And if you don't properly take care of the bulls and engage them in whatever activity, plowing the fields, taking people around in a cart, or whatever you're going to do with that, then you're going to become resentful that they're just eating. Just like I know, if you're managing a temple and you see someone eating, you get angry at them. She's just eating and sleeping. So Prabhupada said you become resentful of the bull if you actually don't engage the bull. So cow protection means the cow and the bull, and then that's the whole consciousness. And where there's milk, there's milk, and if there's not milk, there's not milk. If you're trying to do a business with a cow, it won't work, because what'll happen ultimately is that you'll end up with too many cows, and it's not financially feasible, and then you'll end up with trouble. Unless you have a lot of money, you could just artificially hire a bunch of people to take care of the cows. And nowadays, it's very hard to find people that do farming and taking care of the cows. I mean, yeah, sure. If you have a donor who's giving you millions of dollars, you can do cow protection, pay for the land and everything like that. But it's not something that you can make money from. If you want to make money from it, ultimately you're going to end up, as we've seen in ISKCON, with too many cows and a disaster. And the cows will be mistreated or not taken care of properly. All right?
Yes, thank you very much. I thought it was just important to share that with people that might not be familiar with the circumstances and what it really involves, and also the responsibility that involves, whether you're taking care of the responsibility of taking on deities or taking on cows or raising children.
Yeah, it's like having children, except you can take your children to Disneyland, but you can't take your cows to Disneyland. And another thing is your children grow up and they make money themselves, but the cows don't grow up and go out and make money with it by themselves. You got to take care of them for the rest of their lives. You can't travel. Unless you have a lot of money, you can hire people to take care of them. It is a big endeavor, and it's only practical. Sorry about this, Charlie. It's only practical when you have a village environment, not as a commercial enterprise. There's a village environment, there's a whole village, and people take care of their own cows. Another point is that ownership turns sand to gold, and people, if people have cows and they're not their cows, they're some institution's cows, then people won't take personal responsibility. So there has to be personal responsibility. Best done by the grahastas who have their own cows. Okay, I'm going to end now. We want to thank you all for joining us. And tomorrow evening, we're going to be same time, same station. We're in Portland, Oregon. And we're going to have some programs tomorrow afternoon in Portland, Oregon, too, after this time. And we'll be online with that with our mobile